doing the show again. I had a week off and it was horrible. It was absolutely the worst. However, as you can see, Tim came back tan as a leather hide that's been tanning in the sun, as you can tell. Just kidding. He's red.
That's what I do. I tan. My skin goes from pasty white to bright red to back again. There is no tan. The only tan I get, I don't know if you can see, my freckles get bigger. Right, that's it. I tan in spots, and that's it.
What are you talking about? You have a lovely olive complexion. It's beautiful.
And by the way, forgive me for my camera quality today. Technical difficulties. Basically, I forgot to plug in the camera I use every time, and the batteries are dead. So, yeah,
it happens. Pretty soon we'll have a studio, right? Because I think on whatever platform the viewer is watching from right now, whatever platform is the other one, that's not that one, we have like 1 million subscribers on there. We're about to cross that threshold, so we'll be putting up a new studio pretty soon. So we won't have to worry about all these intermittent quality problems. We'll have Google Fiber plugged right into the asshole of the house. It'll be great.
Speaking of fiber, I should be getting that in the next couple of weeks.
Say what?
I'll be getting fiber at this house in the next week or two. They finally ran the line.
That's disgusting. That's Ohio privilege, which you wouldn't think. You would not think that. Yeah. that face. What? Ohio privilege.
You know that kind of goes right into one of my memes though, because
hold on to one second because I have an announcement, and then you can roll into that.
All right.
So big announcement. Chris will be returning to the podcast relatively soon. So I won't say next week, but either next week or the week after, Chris will be returning to the podcast, and we're super excited about that. So Tim can go back to being an actual fence sitter instead of the default Democrat. But very excited about that. We'll roll things out as we know it, but he's going to be rejoining us and spreading his slanderous social justice lies, and it'll be fantastic, and we'll love to see it. All right, Tim, you first. You said you had something to roll into.
So I live kind of rural-ish now in Ohio. I used to live in the city, and then this last time we moved a bit rural. And so me getting fiber in a rural area goes right into this meme right here. So for those just listening, it says, "Not sure if people are getting more racist or more rural areas are finally getting internet."
Yeah, I saw that one. I scoffed.
Yeah, I thought it was funny, obviously on the surface for what it says, but then thinking deeper as we do here, it's kind of I don't know. I'm trying to think of how I want to say it. It's insulting in a way to the rural people, but just saying that they're all racist.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously demographically, I think poor rural white voters actually obviously slant towards populism and republicanism, but it's actually crazy to me that it's not as uniform as you'd think. Like it's maybe some places, like at the worst it's 80-20, but there's still Democrats mixed in there in the the white rural white man, right? Like it's like even in those quote unquote Republican bastions, there's actually still Democrats. And the same thing in the city, there's Republicans in the city. That always kind of blows my mind. I would think it's like nearly 100% Democrats in New York City and nearly 100% white rural farmers.
I'll tell you what, living out here, those Democrats don't leave their house or something, because
you're very quiet about it. For
you
sure.
You just don't see them anywhere. Like there's so for those of you who didn't know, the reason I was gone last week is I was on vacation. We went to Florida, and there were flags all over on these houses. Trump flags, and they were like new ones. They weren't like Trump 2020. They were like,
he lives down there, right?
Mar-a-Lago, yeah. They were like, "Don't blame me. I voted for him." Trump. Like that.
Yeah.
All the flags were insane like that. But they were everywhere. Yeah, it's
Yeah. I feel like Florida is the new sort of populous capital of the country if there ever was one, which is weird because it's a swing state, but it's just, everybody, all the populists, I mean, including myself, but I'm not really a populist, are just loving Ron DeSantis. Trump's living there now. Ron DeSantis is like, it's like, oh, I'm going to try to, protect Trump from extradition to New York, and all sorts of bullshit. But there's just like all sorts of like Trumpers down there. It's great. They need a place. They need a home, kind of like the Jews need Israel. Okay, just kidding. That was a joke. All right.
yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point, though. Like, we're talking on this podcast to try and break information silos, and I guess that extends to cultural silos, right? Like to try and expand people's minds and let them at least see other ways, understand that other ways work, even not necessarily trying to make you do something different, but like accept people, right?
Right, just
And
to understand that there are genuine people across the aisle. I think that's what people lose a lot. It's the first and the easiest thing to let go of is that there's smart opposition to you, and that B, and I'm not saying that smart opposition to me, but then B, there's also well motivated people.
yeah, and kind of to that point, we talk politics, but I think that works culturally too. If you take all of people of one mindset, give them a place, Israel for Jews or Florida for populists, whatever, it just reinforces. It does the opposite of what we're trying to do here,
Right.
So I don't know.
I would disagree that the Jews are in any way homogenous in the way they think, though. They're very much not. Like there's a lot of liberal Jews. There's a lot of conservative Jews. They're all across
Yeah, I
the
agree.
spectrum in a whole bunch of ways.
I agree. I agree.
Like, I mean, there's a you get. I mean, they do. I'm not sure if you know about their government, but they do a coalition government, which means they have different factions within the government, and then they essentially need to form coalitions in government to grab like 51%. I believe it's like they have to grab the majority. It might actually be like 60% of the government, and all the different factions, like the ultra Orthodox Jews, and then the Jews, and then the liberals, and then the Arabs, and then like all the different factions that are inside Israel have to like come together and form the majority government. And actually, Benjamin Netanyahu actually just got kicked out because someone else formed a larger coalition.
Yeah, I read something about that.
Yep. So, but my only point being, they're not quite as homogenous as you think on a lot of things. They are homogenous, or very largely homogenous, on national defense, let's say, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in any grouping of people, you could take just Republicans and put them in a box, and then within that group, there's going to be a distribution of beliefs, and then you could take one section of that distribution and put it in another box, and then there will be another distribution. So it's obviously wasn't my intent to say all Israelites or all Florida Republicans or populists believe the same thing, but I think that by isolating cultures, points of views, you shrink that. You enhance that silo, right? You shrink that,
of
that
course.
bell curve.
Of course, I agree.
So I want to flatten the curve.
Yeah,
I don't want to make it. I don't want to make it taller. I want to flatten it. Yeah. So anyway.
All right. So let me pop something up.
Whoa.
This is going to be a little bit NSFW, so don't show your kids. I mean, it's tough to see what's going on. Plus, I don't have this thing full screened, and I think I won't full screen it.
You just said, let me pop something up. It's going to be a little NSFW. Really, this isn't that kind of podcast, my dude.
Listen, man, everybody older than 15 didn't catch that reference, and now it's just out there. All right, I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I will not pop something up. I will switch to my other screen on which there's a GIF. It's not of the thing that you're thinking about. Anyways, so this is just like something real quick. I mean, we could talk about it for a few minutes, but this is really just for people who say, why don't you just use your taser? Right? A lot of times you hear that. It's like, well, the cop shot him. It's like, well, why didn't you just use his taser? Well, the following is why tasers are very unreliable. There's a guy, he's got something, it might be a bar, right? He's down in the chair. It looks like he just got tased, but he didn't. He was faking. So now he's up and he's fucking hitting the cop. He's beating him with either a knife or whatever baton he had. So,
Hmm.
quick clip demonstrates sometimes
I
tasers
think
are
the guy,
ineffective.
I think the guy actually got tased, but then was able to
You
like
think it ran out?
fight out of it. Or he just was like his body get used to it at that point. He was able to like recover because the way he stiffens and falls, like that's hard to fake,
Yeah,
especially
it could
spur of the
be.
moment.
I bet I could fake it right now. I just won't do it because I got a green screen right there. But
Well,
look, first
you
of all,
gotta
it's
like
possible.
not try and stop yourself, which is totally a natural instinct to try and slow your fall. Stiffen
Well, it falls
completely
right
and
into
just
the damn
fall like a
chair.
tree.
Well, so okay, so let's broaden out the topic now. Let's forget about this guy individually. I mean, I've heard stories back when I was getting training for security reaction forces in the Navy. There was a guy who was an ex New York cop, and he was telling us, every day we'd go on lunch, and he would tell us stories about, this is what I experienced in the New York police department, and of course they were all crazy. And he's talking about this one guy who the entire community knew, all the cops knew the guy. He was the nicest guy ever, but he would just do PCP and become this raging monster, right? And he was talking about how all the cops would like bust open the door and then they would shoot the taser at him, and then he would just kind of like and he'd grab the things off and throw them off, and then they'd tase him again, and grab the things off and throw them off, and then they did it like a third time, and then eventually they just had to like throw the taser at him and shut the door and let him come off his high. It's like, so like the point is like tasers are tasers are a good tool. Tasers have an appropriate deployment, but oftentimes they are ignored in favor of the sure tool, right? Because the cop's job at the end of the day is to go home.
Yeah, I think that's the line that's worth talking about above the rest of it. I agree with you. I don't think it's a question that the tasers have their limitations, right? Regardless if that guy faked it or got tased and came out of it, in either case, right, the taser had its limitations. But I think the discussion on that is where do you draw the line on it's the officer's job to go home, right? Obviously, that's the intent, and that should be a goal, right? Is that they go home, but it's
No,
not.
I think that's well.
It can't be the primary goal,
No, it
or
is 100% the primary goal.
it,
That
it,
cop's job is to survive no matter what.
no. That cop's job is to protect and serve the population. His
Okay,
job
well,
is to.
right,
It's
right. So, but
similar to
I'm
being in
not.
the military. Hold on, similar to being in the military. Your
Yes.
your 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 goal isn't like 100% go home, take any action necessary to make sure I go home. Your goal is to complete some mission, do whatever, and there are risks that are associated with it. The same thing with the police officer. I'm
Right.
not
So your
saying they
top
should.
priority until you're doing something heroic is to keep yourself alive, and then your second priority is to get your job done. If you're doing something heroic, by definition, that's putting your life under others. Like if you're running into a burning building. Right? I'm not saying that you should go willy-nilly shooting. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that your job is to survive, and that you need to use the tools to do that.
Uh, no, I still disagree. And it's a hard line to draw, and I'm not, and
Well,
I
I'm
and
not
don't
saying
take
it's
it.
not.
And don't take me to be saying that cops need to put their lives at risk more. Like that isn't really the point I'm trying to make either. But um, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if your first thought is my life above everything else, 100%, I'm going home, then you take that 1% situation where there's a 1% chance this person could be a threat to me, and now it becomes a 100% situation because you've now said 100% of the time I'm going home. I'm taking this small. I'm not accepting this small chance, this small risk. I'm going to,
Right, and I suppose
increase force and act appropriately.
yeah, we're honing in on probably the best language there is what's the risk reward, what risks
Yeah,
are acceptable to take, and I think we're both probably getting at our positions really probably aren't that much different. I'm probably a little bit more towards I really understand when the cop who has to do this job every single day, when the cop takes less of a risk and handles things that seem and acts in a manner that seems a little bit too controlling or too aggressive in order to preserve to control the situation and go home. And I'm not saying obviously, and so the people who really don't like the cops, what you think I just said is not what I actually just said. What I meant exactly what I just said. I did not mean that they should overdo every situation. I meant that I grant cops a little bit more leeway when it comes to making sure that they're okay. It doesn't mean there's not bad cops, and there are bad cops, and they need to be dealt with. They need to be fired or prosecuted depending on the situation. So
right, yeah. I mean, I don't think we're far off from each other either, but
no.
I don't have it pulled up. I actually had it put up last podcast, and then we ended up not getting to it. But it's I think it was in France, but it's a European military situation or police situation. There's a lady up against like a fence line, kind of behind the corner of a fence line with a rifle, or I don't recall if it's an assault rifle or like a hunting rifle or what. She has a firearm for sure in hand, and she's standing out kind of in public. And there's 3 or 4 cops standing behind their cop car with guns pointed at her, trying to calm her down. She's walking towards them, stepping back into cover, walking towards them, moving around, raising and lowering the weapon, doing all these things that, you would expect to see in the U.S. She just gets shot. And these cops continue to try and defuse, and they're hiding behind the car and putting themselves at risk over time, like continuing to try and talk this down, while another officer sneaks around the back of this fence, goes in there, can't get through the door that would give him access to get behind her, goes and gets the owner of the house. That guy comes out and unlocks the door for him, all silently, while the other cops are trying to talk this lady down. And then he's able to crack it open and kind of get into position. And then, at some point when she gets mildly distracted, he charges out and tackles her, and they get the gun away from her, and happy everyone goes home. But I watched that, and I thought to myself, I was like, that shit wouldn't happen in the US.
It's funny you say that. That 100% would happen in the US.
I know that those things have happened. I understand, and I'm not. I was trying to get to the point of our perception these days, right?
Yeah.
That those things would never happen, but that's not what's shown anymore.
No, it's not. Yeah, and you're talking about echo chambers, and it's not just echo chambers. It's also what we want to see. We do want to see those dangerous things, and so when we see the cop getting shot, that's absolutely horrible, and we sort of like look at it like a train wreck, and we can't look away. The cop shooting people, the same thing. Whatever it is, like we gravitate to those things, regardless of the information silo.
Yeah, I guess the reason I was saying that story though was to close that thought was, I think we underestimate the risk that a lot of officers do undertake, right? Mm-hmm. Because we see repeatedly the examples where officers are unwilling to take that risk, and more aligned with your mentality of, hey, I'm going home, fuck you.
Yep.
But there's so many officers out there, like the ones that were in that video, that do take that risk and do kind of put that, hey, I'm here to protect and serve, until whatever line is their line of level of danger that they're willing to take to try and save that person's life. They're willing, and there's so many in our country that do it too. We just don't see it anymore, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. That's why, that's why I keep saying that, I used to say there should be, why isn't there a news agency that just reports the good news, that just reports on the cops that do the right thing, and the answer is that there's probably about 30 of them. There's probably about 50 of them. And we just don't go to them because we don't care, because that's not why we listen to news. We listen to news because we're trying to figure out what's bad out there, just, psychologically.
John Krasinski, I think is his name, the guy from The Office. He did
my favorite actor.
He did a happy news. I don't know if it was a Zoom call, daily YouTube video, whatever. My wife showed it to me like a year something ago when COVID was happening. He just would daily come out and talk about happy stuff, and that's it. That's all he would talk about. And it got viral. So some people like happy.
Some people do. Yeah, and you'll see that scrolling through Reddit sometimes too. All right, what else? What you got now?
So this is my background picture,
It is.
and I just happened across it this week. And the caption for this was, JFK giving a speech in Appalachia for his campaign tour. This is him campaigning for presidency. How different is it? First off, if you see the kid that's right behind him, he's got a gun pointed in his face.
He certainly does.
I don't know.
That's got to be a toy. That has to be a toy.
It probably is, but it just caught me.
It was just different times, Tim. You wouldn't understand.
Right. Just different times. Definitely it was. Like, nobody has a chair like that anymore. What is that? It's got
I
two
remember
steps.
something like those in school, just not without 2 steps. I don't know what's up with that.
But I mean, there's a couple things I thought was interesting. One, the mic or whatever he has a cable that doesn't go anywhere. It just goes into his pocket or something.
Huh.
So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what's going on there. And that cable is really dark.
The transmitter's too big to just have on the microphone.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. Did they have wireless transmitting that? I don't know.
Well, they had radio, so they had at least some kind of wireless transmission.
Yeah. But I mean, imagine Trump giving a speech that close to people, or Biden, or anybody, any campaigning person these days, like 2 feet, 1 foot away
from to be fair,
a child kids, with a gun.
Yeah, well, probably a fake gun. Well, look, man, times were different back then. Listen, I don't know what you think about this, but like, you think about the value of, let's say, the value of human life, like whether it's a politician, whether it's a soldier, whether it's just a person. The value of human life over history has just like exponentially gone up as we got rich. It's like you think about armies of the ancient world clashing and achieving 60% casualty rates on the regular. It's like,
it's not as we got rich. It's as our beliefs changed. And in the U.S. is a big motion of this, but it's individualism over nationalism or over patriotism.
True. Yeah. That right there. That's 100% right there.
Yeah, it's valuing the individual life so much, and people didn't care about the individual.
Right. Back. You can actually still see, even in the modern day, like even in what you're right, because even in say wealthy nations such as Japan, you can actually still see different mindsets where, for example, they value their contributions to society over their individualism. Like it doesn't necessarily matter who they are as a person or finding their truth or their happiness. It matters, like their job matters, and what that is that's an ancient, that's a long-standing mindset of accepting your station, being the best that you can at what you do, and just doing that all day long, and that being you.
Yeah, imagine kamikazes today, right? Like,
yeah,
we're going to design a role where you don't come back.
Right. And to Americans, we say that's the most evil thing ever, right? Sacrificing yourself to, to the
not
thing.
Evil.
And, like, sure, because I subscribe to the individualism mindset, but I mean, it makes sense within the framework of, nation over self, which they did have a very strong nationalism back then, but it would have been like emperor over self or society over self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. What else? Here. All right. So I brought this one up for a little bit of a thought experiment, and there's always 2 sides to everything, and it's kind of funny because it depends on what decade it is, which side the liberals will play very often. But I think the right and left also switch on some topics every once in a while. But I'm just going to read out. So this is a tweet, right? And the top part, the first part is a reporter, right? She's linking to a BBC article. And then the bottom is the person who is a self-professed angry woman. And she retweeted it and said something about it. So here's the tweet. The tweet is, should people with learning disabilities be allowed to work for less than minimum wage? Debate on, BBC Live at this time, right? And then the retweet and the comment was added was, alternate phrasing of this question: should employers be allowed to exploit some of society's most vulnerable people? Right?
Yep.
And so what I want to say before I turn it over to you is the bottom statement is valuable, and there is truth in that. And that is very much what the modern left would say. However, it completely ignores the question of what do you mean you're not allowing people to work, right? So let's say people with disabilities can't work because people won't hire them because their services provided aren't worth the salary, right? So they can't hire them because minimum wage, right? So now if you're allowing them to work for less than minimum wage, which means they can work at all, which turns out not to be the case, but we're using this premise, you're now as the liberal, as the person who's supposed to be helping that person, you're saying, no, you can't work. You can't work because they won't pay you enough. And it's like, well, then I can't work at all because they won't hire me, right? And there's these two sides of the coin. It's like, first the liberal said, no, let them work because that's the liberal thing to do. And then the liberal said, no, I'm compassionate. They need to have a living wage, and then they don't work at all. And so you have this ping-ponging back and forth. And neither, both sides are trying to be compassionate, and they're both fucking it up.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it shows some of the struggles with minimum wage to begin with, which is
Yep.
if there is work that needs to be or that can be done or needs to be done, but isn't worth the minimum wage.
Right. It doesn't provide the company with value commensurate to the minimum wage payment.
Yeah. There's work that can be done that does provide value, but just not enough value to meet minimum wage, and that work doesn't get done anymore, or gets rolled into another job, or
Right.
In some other way is taken care of. And then the other side of it though is, like if we've decided that for somebody to be working full time as a society, this is what somebody's full time day is worth, and you're not capable of doing work that achieves that, then to me you're disabled and you should be eligible for disability or something, right? Like
true.
and so it's, and you want to work and be a person coming out and being productive for society. Thank you, brain, for finally working. You want to be productive in society, you want to feel good about yourself and all that, but there's nothing available. There should be some sort of a middle ground where a company, like they get disability or they get whatever, and it's equal to minimum wage or whatever it is, I don't know. And then they start working for a company, and the company gets has to pay them the minimum wage, but they get some portion of the disability, or given back to them rather than to the employee, or I don't know, make it a win-win in some way, like.
Yeah, that's so interesting too.
So complicated though, like it's just complicated.
It would be. And then you've set up a system of perverse incentives where it's like, well, this person was making, let's say disability is like $5 an hour before. Now they're working and they're getting $15 an hour, but they're working, or like whatever that would come out to be. Now you have that perverse incentives where it's like, okay, well, now people might not want to, because you're giving them that disability in the first place. And that's kind of what we're seeing, or allegedly what we're seeing with the economy right now, where companies are trying to hire and they can't go back to work. And I actually thought I was going to talk about that this week, but it completely slipped my mind during preparation. So I don't think we're going to talk about that very much. I don't have much on that, but inflation too. I didn't bring up anything on that. Haha, I was right. Anyways.
Yeah,
all right. Yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to say on that.
The COVID has been a unique situation because the unemployment affected so many people.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, you have a minority of people abusing these systems, and they do get abused. There's no question about it, and abuse is unfortunate, and it's going to happen. But I don't think that some abuse warrants tearing down a system, but I do think that the COVID stimulus stuff has stunted people returning to work in this country.
Yeah, certainly. And obviously there's a smart discussion to be had about, to how much has it done? What can we do about it? I'm curious, just real quick, what do you think about I don't know what it is. I think it's like 23 states that have cut off the additional $400. I think it is the additional $400 in unemployment, not insurance, unemployment benefits from the federal government.
That's a tough one. I didn't, but
Yeah, they're just straight up foregoing it because they think people are, right. They
Yeah.
think along the lines that I do, which is that the perverse incentives of too much unemployment is meaning people aren't going back unless they're being bribed by like $1,000 job interviews and, like $15 minimum wage where the company didn't want to do that before, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the minimum or the unemployment stuff's playing a big part. There's also other parts too. I mean, if you look at like servers, I was having this conversation with my wife and some friends the other day because out on vacation, we saw a lot of different restaurants that just were way understaffed.
Yeah.
And we were talking about why, and I made the point. I was like, well, they're probably getting just as much or close to as much or even more staying home. And my wife made a couple good points on that, which was, on top of that, it's a very hostile work environment right now for some jobs. You look
Which ones?
at the servers is the one we were talking about. There's a lot of people, especially where we were in Florida, that are extremely mean and rude to the servers because most restaurants are making the servers wear masks, as an example, and so they're like, I can't hear you. Can you take the mask off? What? Like they're just being very mean and rude to them, right? And
Yeah.
And they're overworked because people aren't showing up or aren't working.
That's true.
Now they're overworked. And so you combine it all, and it's just a real nasty place to work. And so you're like, well, I can make nearly the same or more or whatever, and just stay home. Like, why wouldn't you?
Right.
So it's a combination of things for sure. But I do think that, I think that the stimulus money was great. The first round for that, and even the second round up until maybe the last month or two, where enough people now are getting vaccinated, and
41%.
And so things should be starting to open back up a lot more. I think it's like 95% of Democrats. I think now.
Yeah, I'm sure, buddy. I'm sure.
But I don't know. When's it expire from the federal side? It should be coming up pretty soon.
When does what expire? Sorry.
Didn't Biden extend the extra unemployment money?
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. It might be one of those things where it pays, and I'm really just talking out my ass right now. But I think it might be one of those things that pays until it runs out or something like that.
Oh, I thought it had a time frame, but yeah, I do think each state should probably look at their employment records, like look and see what jobs are available, what's open, and if there's a large number of jobs out there open and people just aren't going for them, then they need to cut that back.
Yeah, I would agree. What do you think about tying unemployment entitlements to 60% of the salary that you're receiving before you lost your job?
It's an interesting one. It can screw some people, right? Like, I think if you did it more like Social Security, where you look back a long time and you take some average, I'd be more for that. But let's say I was making $100,000 a year and got laid off, got fired, whatever, and was like, I still want to contribute. I go take a $50,000 job,
right.
And then COVID happens, and now all my benefits are based off of that. It's like, come on.
Yeah, sure. That's floating 3-year average or something like that. Sure,
but
I like it.
I think that it should be based off your wage to some extent, but partly because companies pay into it and you pay into unemployment and stuff anyway, so that makes sense. But I think unemployment should have a moderate payback requirement.
That's pretty conservative of you.
I don't know how much. I mean, I don't want it to be a lot, like 10%, 15%, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a lot, but let's say I'm getting $1,000 a month from unemployment. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be on the hook to pay back $100 of that every month at some point, right? And not while you're on unemployment. It doesn't, it's not like you just get 900 now. I guess you could just stash 100 away, but most people probably don't. But the idea is that after unemployment, you owe some of that back, which is an incentive to get off of it and go get a job. And it's at a reasonable, rate. Maybe it's, the federal rate or something, interest rate, but there should be, some incentive for you to get off of it and to go find your job.
Yeah.
Other than just you only get 6 months of it or something. And it could be a 30-year loan. You only have to pay $10 a month. I'm not trying to make a bad situation worse for people by being like, you're out of a job now, you got to pay some of this money back.
Right.
I want it to be.
No, I got you,
doable.
man. I tend to agree with you. I do.
Yeah.
Although, again, that'll be abused too. People will just default on it. But hey, I mean, we're not going to solve this overnight. I like where your head's at, though.
Always abusers. So here's one that I thought was kind of a funny one. It says me. Can I have 5 boxes of decongestant, please? And the store clerk says, sorry, limit is 2, and I need some ID. And then the person says, can I have 500 boxes of ammo and 5 rifles, please? And then the clerk says, hell yeah, bro, no questions asked. And it's an interesting point that like we've put restrictions on some really interesting things while foregoing restrictions on others. And that doesn't apply in all states for sure.
No. I mean, technically that as it stands doesn't apply in any state, right? Well, yeah, some of them it does. Okay, the constitutional carry states, sure. Yeah. But I mean, I get it. There's reasons for and against each. But I mean, the decongestant, as he says, is something that you can abuse and get high, right? I didn't find that out until I went into boot camp, and then people got kicked out for doing it in boot camp. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're in boot camp. Stop doing it. Anyways. So you can get high on cough syrup, and so it's the liberal moms of the state got together, sent letters into the legislature, and the legislature is like, okay, yes, we have to limit the sale of decongestants to people who are over 18, right? And so now that's a law, and now here we have a liberal sort of making a quasi. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe that. A liberal making a meme out of it, right? When it was probably his side that did it in the first place.
I wonder if is that a state thing?
Is that not the case in Ohio? But I'm pretty sure. So like decongestants, cough syrup, cough medicine, those kinds of things you can get high on and are controlled in at least my state and Illinois. That's all I know.
Right, but that's my question. Is it a state thing or is it a federal thing?
I'm not sure. Well, I mean, you think about it.
It's probably a controlled substance. It's just allowed over the counter, and so it could be that.
Right. Well, the very fact that I just said that a guy got kicked out of boot camp for doing it means it probably is a federally controlled substance, or at least they pay attention to that to some degree.
Yeah. Well, in this case, it's also the Sudafed is used for making meth, right? So
the thing, yeah.
It's not just you can get high off of it yourself. You use it to, but I still think the point is like, I would prefer the government step in and put regulations on things that other people can use to harm me, rather than stepping in and putting regulations on things that I can use to harm myself.
Yes, well,
right. Does that
invented the Second Amendment?
That makes sense. I'm not just talking about firearms.
Oh.
Right. We have speed limits because driving too fast can harm other people and yourself. Right. But we have a lot of rules and laws in place to protect you from being harmed from other people. It's just my libertarian view, which is where I mostly align, is if we're going to have laws, I want them to be there to protect me from other people rather than to protect me from myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, so, I mean, the libertarian in me, which grows smaller every day, but is still there, agrees with you to some degree, mostly on the deregulation side. So I would err on, okay, you probably should be able to buy cough syrup. But at the same time, like, I'm actually rebelling against that a little because, like I said, the libertarian grows smaller every day. I wouldn't want 16-year-olds to be able to get their hands on a whole bunch of that crap and then, get high and fuck their brain up for the rest of their life. So, I mean, firearms are age required as well. Definitely got to show an ID.
I'm not. Yeah,
I just don't like that whole premise.
Showing ID or being age limited for things, right? Like, I'm okay with things like that.
Which is what firearms are. Like all the things, so the problem is he's setting up like a really weird scenario which just completely exaggerates and ignores everything that's actually true. Like firearms are heavily controlled even in the constitutional carry states. Like If you look like a nut job who's in there to buy a whole bunch of weapons to hurt people, like they can refuse you sales. All sorts of things, all sorts of regulations around it. Again, even in constitutional carry states, and he's kind of like comparing that to you need to show ID to show that you're 18 to get Sudafed. Okay. I don't like it. It's a meme, right? So memes inherently lose.
I think his meme's more targeted at you can only buy this many boxes of Sudafed, but you can buy as many bullets as you want.
Yeah, he's talking about guns.
I mean, he legit talks about quantity of Sudafed, right?
I know.
No,
he talks about quantity of guns too.
Yeah. I think it's both, but to me, my takeaway wasn't.
Wait, you really think that? I took that as a snarky liberal who was talking about gun control. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
I agree, but I didn't take it as saying that we need to limit guns or put this in place of that. I took it more as like we are limiting the quantity you can buy of one thing that is, self-hurting only, but we're okay with you buying as much of this other stuff as
what's he going to do with 4 rifles? He's got 2 arms and he needs both of them for one. You know what I'm saying? Like,
maybe listen. Actually, General Grievous, and he can come out with like 6 arms.
Yeah, that was the image I had in my head. Yes, actually.
Star Wars reference for those of you who aren't as nerdophiled as I am.
Back when it was still good. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I read, I don't know if this is true because I actually didn't read the article. I just did the headline that Lucas is taking over again.
George Lucas is back in.
Creative control for Star Wars or something like that.
Thank God. It's not, it's crazy. The craziest.
They pretty much fucked up the mid-series movies. They were made for children, I think.
Look, I mean, they had some weird ass stuff in there, like Jar Jar Binks is obviously Sith Lord, but I mean, they were visually stunning. They were like, I mean, the dialogue was absolutely horrible, just as it was in the original ones. So nothing new there. They did some weird stuff in the midichlorians. I get why people would be mad at those movies, but the new ones, they're just like barely even movies. Well, the first one was okay. The problem is that they didn't do it. Okay, all right. Like I said, that's all I'm saying about it.
In the After Hours podcast, we'll talk.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
I guess.
All right, we gotta get cracking here. We had a couple topics to get to tonight. I really wanted to do these other ones, but I'm going to show some discipline and save these for another night.
I had one that I want to get to, so I'm going to try and find time later. But let's do that.
Okay, all right. We may, but we may not, because we got a bunch to get to tonight. I know you wanted to talk about Tucker Carlson, so that is your prerogative. So let's talk about that.
You gonna do that one now? We can pull that one up.
Yep.
So the audio on this video isn't going to work, unfortunately. And I tried in the time that I had, so I had a really busy work day today.
Oh, were you looking for a transcript?
No, I was. If I can pull it up on YouTube, then I can do the audio, but I can't do it from this.
Oh yeah, right. You could only find that clip on like Dailymotion or the Fox website, which didn't work. It was the weirdest thing.
I couldn't get it on YouTube. So the long and short of it is, in this clip, which is, I mean, this one's 15 minutes. Tucker Carlson is saying that he's. I guess let me summarize his point really, which is that the risks of taking the vaccine aren't talked about, are higher than we expected, and that people should really think about it before they get it, that kind of thing. Some of the information he uses to back this up and the way he approaches it is very, very misleading. So he talks about a couple of things. The biggest one being the number of people that have died since after taking the vaccine. And directly after talking about that, he goes into talking about people that have died from a vaccine, right? So he analogizes it.
Analogized?
He makes an analogy to other vaccines
created a parallel.
only one person died from this vaccine, or which are two different data sets, right? These are people that died after a vaccine versus from a vaccine. And he continues to go through this entire video doing that.
Yeah.
And really, like, what made me want to bring this video up is talking to a family member this weekend, and them telling me, like, hey, did you hear this many people died from COVID vaccines?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and the number was like 4,300. Well, he gave me the number that Tucker used, which is 3,000 and something. At this point, go look at the CDC, it's 4,000 and something of people that have died after getting the vaccine, not from it, but just after getting it. And I'm like, there's no way that many people died. And I started looking it up, and I was trying to explain to him, like, no, dude, you can't, don't listen to Tucker Carlson, that just shut him off right there. He's like, Tucker's but it got me thinking, like, how many times have we talked about stuff like this? And your response is people don't really believe it. They do. They take this shit seriously. They believe it. They fall for this crap. And so in this particular one, Tucker's saying 3,000 something people died after getting the vaccine, and he's trying to make it seem like that's how many people died from the vaccine. Multiple sites have gone out and come out and blown this up and shown that it's bullshit. But I wanted to just do, like, if you're ever watching left or right news, doesn't matter. All sides twist shit. Like, what I want to try and help people do, what I do when I listen to any of these news articles, is I analyze what they're saying, and I'm like, okay, how is there a loophole in there that they're trying to mislead me, twist?
Exactly. Yeah, you should do this. You should do this with everybody. And before you get into that, I'm 100%.
Don't do it with me. Don't do it with me. I do it to everybody else, but trust me.
Yeah. No, not that. I do this with everybody that I listen to, right? So I 100% live in an echo chamber. My echo chamber is a little bit bigger than a lot of different people's. I try to grab pretty much the panoply of the right. I don't often listen across the aisle, but the people that I listen to occasionally bring them over. I'm not great at this at all, 100%. But with everybody that I listen to, I pick apart as I'm listening everything they say, right? Like, some stuff you can accept uncritically, right? Some of the basic stuff, if they give you a direct fact. But when they come up with conclusions that you know they're biased about, like, you should always, like, every episode of the Ben Shapiro Show, you should be saying, that one right there, actually, I probably have a bit of a problem with that, and then maybe go look that up, right? Especially if it's important to you. None of these people are perfect. They are personalities. They all have their biases. On every side of the aisle, you definitely need to either spread out what you listen to, or believe less what you hear as a rule, or something, because you're gonna get shunted down a whole bunch of rabbit holes if you just accept stuff uncritically.
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't have a chance to go through all of the data he was talking about to see how they don't match up apples to apples. He talks about how many people died after getting a flu vaccine. So that was at least a similar statement, right? I died after getting a flu vaccine or after getting a COVID vaccine. But that doesn't mean that it was the same time duration. Was it within 1 week of getting the flu vaccine? 1 month? 4 months? And the data that they're using for the COVID vaccine is they started giving COVID vaccines at this date. This is how many people have gotten them since then, and this is how many have died since then that have gotten it, right? So if you died between December and, now May, I think, is the data he was using, and you had the vaccine, you counted in those numbers. Didn't matter if you died 4 months after you got the vaccine. You counted in those numbers. Whereas it could have been for the flu, it was like 1 week after, right? Or whatever. Right. But one of the points I wanted to make was the numbers he worked out, and this isn't the numbers he used, but the percentage actually works out to be almost exactly the same. I did it for the numbers that he used. This is the percentage of people that have died after getting the vaccine. Mm-hmm. Right? 0.0017%. That seems super low, and I mean, it could be. Who knows, right? Is that low? Is that high? What's the normal death rate of people? I don't know. So I went and looked, found it. So here's the normal death rate of people in the U.S. It's 870 per 100,000, which is 0.0087%. This is in a year, though, right? 0.0087% in a year.
8 times.
So it's 5 times higher than this. But
Right,
this
sure.
data, this 0.0017%, that's only from December through May, and it's for people that got the vaccine. So it's not the whole population; it's just the people that got it, and it's a subset of the year. But also December and
Yeah.
January, not as many people got the vaccine. So
Yeah, basically, look, to boil down what you're saying right there, there's no causal link in the study that Tucker Carlson himself referenced to like people dying and because they got jabbed with the vaccine. There's nothing in there. There's nothing in the statistics that Tim is going through that outlines there's more deaths than normal for people who are getting the vaccine. There's nothing. There's no medical thing saying, hey, they were injected and then they had an aneurysm on the third day. There was nothing except for self-reported data given to an agency, which is going to be incomplete and biased. And if you die, who's self-reporting? Like, what the heck is going on here?
Well, so that's the second piece. You kind of led into it, right? So the first piece is, if you boil this down, if you take that 0.087 and you say, okay, let's just take 3 months of that, right? And then you say it's not the whole population even, it's only half. It actually works out to be almost exactly 0.0017%. Like it lines right on up with the expected number of people dying. Right? But the next piece is the CDC actually comes out and has a section right here that they talk about reports of death after COVID-19, right? So the FDA requires that anybody that dies after getting the COVID-19 vaccination gets reported, and then they follow up on this and investigate every death. So at the time of this article, not 3,300 or whatever the number Tucker was using, but 4,863 people had died after getting the vaccine. And look, that last article that we used, that was at 2,500 people, and it was 0.0017%. Look at that consistency, right? Like that many people have gotten it now, and it's still the same percentage.
That's crazy. That's crazy accurate.
They review each case as soon as the death's notified, and they do it. And they come out and say that there has been no established causal link to the vaccines. But they don't just like leave it at that. They come out and say, look, recently there's been some plausible causal relationships between the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, where blood clots and low platelets may have caused some of the deaths. They're not saying there's no risk at all.
Right.
I mean, they're not,
Right, but it's insanely low. Okay, so it's the weirdest thing is like there's a lot of weird stuff going on with this, right? So let me try to wrap this back around to Tucker Carlson here. So
oh my goodness, this whole time I didn't have this up.
Yeah, I was going to ask because it sounded like you were narrating something that should have been visually shown.
Here's all these pages. Okay, sorry about that.
You actually did a great job vocally narrating it, so I think we, the audience, got everything that you were talking about.
Son of a bee. All right.
But okay, so let me talk about Tucker Carlson again real quick here. So it's very interesting to me. So number one, 100% he messed up. So if Tucker Carlson's your hero, he did this segment wrong. And you should probably be okay with that being the case, right? All of our heroes fail us at some point. They're all human. So it's bound to happen. So that's number one. Number two, the interesting thing about this segment is that I know for a fact that Tucker Carlson is pro-vaccine, right? He's pro getting vaccinated. So
he is vaccinated.
And he is vaccinated, yes.
He is vaccinated, yes.
Yes. So while this was irresponsible, it is kind of ironic because the actual main thrust of his segment was not that the vaccine is dangerous and we shouldn't get it. It was that we're not allowed to ask questions. And I'm sympathetic to that. He just went about it in a stupid way by using bad statistics, right? He could have brought up valid things and then said people are going to rag on this segment for me questioning the coronavirus. And he would be right about that. But He just did it in a bad way, right? He used bad statistics. Like again, I'm sympathetic to we're not allowed to ask about the coronavirus, right? And that was actually literally up on the chyron that was up on his left says no questions allowed, right? He's doing the populist thing where it's like the government is cracking down on your free speech. They're not letting you ask questions about the coronavirus. It's just like his questions in this particular segment were stupid. Plus, he's pro-vax, so like why is he making it sound like the vaccine is that bad? You know, I think he's just, I don't know, maybe he's just stirring stuff up. Who knows what actually goes through his head?
To close this out, but it's not really about the vaccine or coronavirus. I think the particular journalist in this case failed in that he put this at the bottom of this article and not the top. Because nobody reads the last couple paragraphs. It's all after that. It's after all the ads. It's after all the ads and the pictures.
Yeah. You already think you hit the end because there was the long ad.
Yeah, it's way down there. It says, as always, it's very important to remember that in 2020, a federal judge ruled that Tucker isn't a credible source of news. Keep that in mind before listening to his false claims about the vaccines. That shit should be like on the top of every article
of every single one of them.
It's wasn't
so catty though.
Wasn't his defense that he is satire and that people should not, and he doesn't expect people to believe him or something? It was something along those lines.
Like, it was a lot like the QAnon lawyer. It's not Lynn.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yeah, I was gonna bring.
I forget what her name is, but hey, if anybody out there, if you're still into the QAnon stuff, when your prominent leaders got sued, I know you probably haven't heard about this because we live in echo chambers, which means you're probably not watching the show. But when your prominent leaders got sued by Dominion or were threatened with lawsuit, they said they said no. It was something along the lines of no sane person would listen to the claims that we've made. Basically, like all of the people who listen to me are dumb.
Sidney Powell.
Yeah, Sidney Powell. Thank you very much. She said that basically verbatim. I won't take that to court, but basically verbatim.
And then she's been seen after that coming out and repeating all those claims while she's defending this in court. The court
is 100%. Like, so to me, I give people a lot of benefit of the doubt. She's got to be a grifter. She is in it for the money. Or something, or she's crazy. I don't know. Well, she was smart enough to come up with that. Actually, her lawyer, because she probably didn't represent herself, her lawyer was smart enough to come up with that defense, which is all right. That's it. I won't say anything else about that. All right, you want to move on to lab leak?
Yeah, do it.
Okay, so
pardon me.
There's a bunch of articles I could have chose from to go on with this one, but I mean, I don't necessarily need to read all of them. If you've been plugged into the news at all, I mean, you've seen that the Wuhan lab leak theory has come back. So let me just summarize it real quick. We'll talk about what the lab leak theory is, and then we can go into what we think about it and all that junk. So early on in the pandemic, it was noted that while there is a wet market in Wuhan, which is where the coronavirus originated from in China, while there is a wet market where bats and pangolins and all sorts of snakes and stuff were sold to be eaten, there is also a virology, an institute of virology, like right across the street, right? So the predominant theory for a very long time was that SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 jumped from a bat or a pangolin or some kind of animal directly from them to humans, and then it spread. Pangolin.
Oh,
pangolin. They got little.
All right.
Yeah.
I thought you said penguin. Like I was like, bro, I don't think so.
No, I'm sorry. I'm slurring together with my apple juice. So that's been the main theory. That's been the main theory kind of this whole time is that this jumped straight from an animal. This was out in the animal population. Then somebody either ate a bat or touched a bat or kissed a bat or something like that, and then it jumped. Okay, so there it is right there. So the Huanan seafood market. That's what I'm talking about right there. That's the wet market. That's a very nice name for it, seafood market. So it's basically just a whole bunch of wild animals, bats, snakes, pangolins, whatever it is, a whole bunch of stuff sold for food because China doesn't have the established food network or food chain that the United States does. And lots of diseases come out of them. So that's been the default. Now it's coming out that the Wuhan Institute of Virology may actually be the cause of this epidemic, this virus, right? So early on,
it's been speculated on since
yeah,
the beginning of the virus, right?
yeah, that's kind of important. So let's talk about that real quick. So while the wet market had been and for a long time was the predominant theory, and maybe still might be, it might be like a 50-50 at this point. While that was the predominant theory, even very early on, people were pointing out, hold on, there's an Institute of Virology right there, right? And so Trump was talking about it a little bit early on. It was kind of the populist thing to say that, right? And the mainstream media pushed back against it, right? And so you'll actually hear a lot of interviews where people were talking about, well, we pushed back on this theory because Trump was talking about it. It's like, yeah, we know. I know. You know, that doesn't make it right. Like, why were you doing that? But anyways, so
did you elect
what's
Trump?
made it?
It's your fault.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It is my fault. I elected him. So what made it more prominent recently is that news came out that there was a study that dropped, I believe, and in that study it says that there were 3 employees from that lab who were hospitalized in November for a mysterious illness. Right? It's like, ding, 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 ding. Red flags going way, way up. And I think there were a couple other things in there. There was talking about the disease itself, where there's no known natural ancestor of this in the wild. Like, we have not found a bat with COVID in it to this point. There's a couple other things, but there's huge problems with China's stonewalling, right? So China is not cooperating. China's not, China has allegedly been destroying evidence this whole time, trying to, shut people up and not have them talk. They're not cooperating with the World Health Organization. They basically say, no, you can't come here. What are your questions? And then they just answer the questions. And then the World Health Organization is like, yeah, sounds good. Sounds like it came from a bat. So that's where we are now. I don't know. I was curious what you thought about it.
I've actually from the beginning thought that there was a good chance. I don't know what a good chance means, right? 20% chance.
Well, it's significant. When I hear good chance, I hear greater than 20%.
Okay. Well, almost a good chance that 19.99%. Let me say a reasonable chance. Like, just it wasn't impossible. It wasn't out of the realm of feasibility that it came from this lab. Not only is it really close to where the stuff was released, but that particular institute does study diseases, the SARS viruses and other things.
Yep.
I'm kind of torn on the national and international response a little bit. I do. I generally am one that's like, hey, let's be open to all data. Let's talk about it. And those things. And I expect, I would like that most people would be that way. But at the same time, if you think of the World Health Organization, they're not a police department of the world. And if they go to China and say, hey, what the hell happened? And China gives them data that could be that seems legit. Like, who are they to be like, okay, you know what? You're full of shit, China. I'm coming in and investigating. So, like, because a lot of people get on the World Health Organization about this, and I think they do have some blame for not pushing investigation or not.
Or how about thoughtlessly passing along?
Yeah, but at the same time, like that. What is their role really? Like, where's their empowerment?
Well, I mean, they're the damn World Health Organization. Look, so look, they passed, they uncritically accepted China's statement, the Chinese Communist Party's statement that there was no human-to-human transmission in January.
Right, but
they told the rest of the world
hold on. So imagine that something like this breakout happened here in the U.S. first, and we said the same thing. Would we expect them to be like, we're coming into your facilities and investigating first? No, we would
Okay.
expect them to take our word for it.
All right. So So there's a very okay. So there's a little bit of whataboutism here, but there's just absolutely 100% not the same, right? So
It's
early on
not
in this
from us
pandemic,
because we live here.
what's that?
The World Health Organization should be independent from nationalist views,
I agree.
right? It should
I agree.
view every country sovereign and independent, and I think it has to take a certain stance of this is what you're telling me, country. This is what I'm going to distribute. Now they have to be critical on the information they get, for sure. Critically think about it, make sure it you know at least passes muster to some extent. But I don't think that they at this point are, not that they shouldn't be in the future, it could be, but they aren't right now. I don't think the World Health Police, right?
Yeah, but look. Okay, so I kind of get what you're saying, but like there's a problem here, which is that again they uncritically passed along information that likely got people killed, right? So, and I don't necessarily, I'm not necessarily proposing a solution to this, but just listen to like some of the stuff that China was doing early on. So China was deliberately stifling news about this, right? Because they didn't want an international embarrassment. So early on in this pandemic, we're talking about January, they were disappearing doctors that were speaking out about this new unknown disease, right? They were literally disappearing doctors who were saying, "Hey, we've got this disease. There's human-to-human transmission. Why aren't we doing something about this? Why aren't we locking down the province? Why aren't we locking down travel?" Right? China was doing that, right? And I read articles myself here in the United States. So the news was getting out that this was happening, that that the news was getting suppressed. The World Health Organization has Google. They have Yahoo News, which is what I was browsing back then, right? They had access to this information as well. And yet uncritically, they accepted this information from China, who has a history of lying, right? And so later on, when shit really started hitting the fan, China locked down travel from Wuhan to other parts of China, and they did not lock down international flights out of Wuhan. So they locked the whole thing down except for international flights. Right? So basically saying, "Oh no, we don't want any of that human-to-human transmission coming into the rest of China, but we'll let it go out to the rest of the world." Right? So when I see the international reaction, I think it's honestly a bit subdued, or maybe right on the money, right? So China has a bunch of questions it needs to answer, and it needs to answer them honestly and openly and transparently.
I agree. I wasn't saying that China doesn't have responsibility. I was only talking about the World Health Organization, and not that they didn't make any mistakes. And I agree that they're, on the human to transmission, like we all assumed it was that at that point, and they were still saying, "No, we don't see evidence of it." But
yeah,
it's one of those. I feel like it's a catch-22 where unless you see evidence in the contrary, you almost kind of have to take the country's word for it. Like, I don't know, like.
Yeah, right. So that's where I get to, like, you're actually kind of convincing me a little bit, because like. I suppose my criticism would then just be limited to, they should not have passed it on as this is the known facts. They should have said China is reporting this, and we have reasons to doubt because of this, right? So if they had that evidence to the contrary, or they saw like, hey, we have evidence that this is widespread, and we know that doctors are being suppressed, and it sounds to me like it's very unlikely that it's not human to, like, they should have said something more along those lines, because they're smart. Like, they're better at this than I am, obviously. So like when I was picking this stuff up out in Yahoo News articles, I don't know. Maybe I'm just full of hot air. So
No, I agree. I think the statement, instead of, because I believe their statement was, does not have human to human transmission. I think they were like does not.
Yeah.
And it should have been, there's no evidence of human to human transmission. There are unconfirmed reports or something, right? Like something to say, look, like we're being told that it doesn't have it, and we have the data that we've seen so far says that it doesn't, but there are reports out there that it has, and we haven't seen them yet. Or like, I don't know. I'm all about transparency, and I feel like there could have been better transparency through all that situation.
Yeah.
But I also do understand the World Health Organization's situation a little bit, in that if a country as big and influential as China comes out and says, "Here's our data," and then you're like, "Yeah, but we think you might be full of shit."
Yeah. Yeah, that's true too. I mean, there's always politics in all of it, right? Because I mean, World Health Organization is all right. Is he gone for everybody, or is he just gone for me?
My video,
Your video.
yeah, I just reset it. There it goes. It yeah. There's a delay. It should be back now.
I will carry on this conversation with this black box. I don't actually remember what I was going to say. I was talking about remember World Health
Yeah.
Organization. Yeah. So there's politics in all of it, right? So I mean, China, the World Health Organization is funded by various nations. It's kind of like a United Nations, group effort
Yeah.
type deal, where the world sort of funds them, right? So they can't necessarily piss off one of their larger donors, and I totally get that, right? And that's where that viral video comes from, of one of the guys of the World Health Organization sort of just completely ignoring and then hanging up on somebody who asked whether the World Health Organization considered Taiwan a country, which is.
Yeah, trying to always pull the wrong people into politics. And then the one thing that I got out of the
You're still not there for me, by the way. Actually, let me refresh.
I'm watching a delayed YouTube video of us. It's like 15 seconds delayed, and I still see myself.
Are you good on there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's just me. Carry on then. I'll figure it out.
I believe it was leaked more recently that those 3 doctors or 3 people from the lab had gotten sick. I don't think it was an official report or anything. I forget how you worded it originally, but
a report referenced that. So I don't know if it was
Gotcha.
a leak. I would assume it was some kind of leak, but there was a report compiled that talked about the rest of this stuff plus that incident.
Yeah. So that one got me a little bit, but I think that, combined with a couple of the other things I've heard, put me, originally I was thinking it was reasonable that it could have been a leak from there. I'm now to the 50-50 mark. And I say that because of that information where, there was people that got sick that was hidden and not reported on. Like, if it didn't come from there, why do you hide this shit? Right? It's one of those, like, makes you look bad. Like, just admit.
Just open it up, man. Show us all the records from there. It's like, you think there's some research there that you're hiding from the United States? Like, you think there's something that your scientists know that we don't? Like, just open up your lab. Let us see what's going on there. Show us the records. Who was sick? When did that vial drop? When one of the interns, it's like, oh, just sweep that under the table. I'm sure that's not dangerous.
2 other things. Pardon me. One was that I read somewhere that that Institute of Virology studies SARS viruses in bats.
Yep.
So, like, that's like, well, coincidence?
Yeah, no, they absolutely do, right? And then there was much more recently, there was the question of whether they do gain of function research, right? And for those who aren't familiar, gain of function research in viruses is when scientists specifically manipulate viruses to become their worst selves, right? To become the COVIDs or worse, like say Ebola with the spreading rate of COVID. They deliberately gain the function for these viruses so that they can study how they spread and how we can combat them in the future, right? And the gamble is that these things don't escape from the labs that we make them in, right? Because we're careful. But it's looking, like Tim said, maybe 50-50 that gamble did not pay off for us in the 21st century.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to say was there's a couple really interesting videos I watched of virus doctors. Their doctorate
Epidemiologists.
Their doctorate is in virology, so virus doctors. Talking about the DNA breakdown of the original virus, at least, and how it seems like there would have had to have been manual effort to make it do what it did, based on, like you said earlier, the lack of evidence from the wild, where we don't have anything that's similar enough to this. And then the last piece is, and I don't know how true this is, I just saw it in one article, but I guess China has been preventing anyone from the outside from exploring the nearby caves to get samples of the bats.
Yeah, they're just locking the whole thing down. You actually just tipped off my memory too.
Right, like one bat had it, and that's the one that got. No, like you would imagine that this is spread amongst bats at this point, and that
it should be fairly widespread somewhere, right? You know, there's some bat colony that should have it.
Yeah.
But you tipped off my memory too. Is it apparently also China has been allegedly attempting to reverse engineer a lineage to COVID, like so they're trying to reverse it back to like genetically make a natural ancestor to it. And apparently they've been caught doing that, which I know less and less about that, but like you can kind of tell.
That seems conspiracious to me, but it could be.
Yeah. Well, I got this all in the same place, though. I'm pretty sure.
Actually. And my new camera placement makes me look like completely wasted. My eyes look like they're super closed, and I think I need to switch my camera.
You'll get it back, bro. We'll have the old Tim back before you know it.
I'm right here.
We'll have Timmy back before he even knows he's gone.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this turns out, but I don't know that we're ever going to get a final answer.
Let's do it real quick. What if we do get a definitive? What do you think should happen in China? Is the fun part. I think they should be dismantled.
So if it comes out that it was a leak, so then what's the problem? It's the cover-up, right? It's like if you...
Yep, it's the cover-up. It's the fact that they were doing gain of function in a lab where they shouldn't have been. It's the whole bunch of
maybe they could have. Maybe it was fine to do it there. I don't know that. But
so they that lab received funding from the NIH, which is the American something or whatever. They received funding contingent to the fact that they were not doing gain of function. So they should not have been doing gain of function research there.
Yeah, so they lose funding. But again, it goes back to who are we to go into someone else's country and say, here's what you can and can't do.
We're giving them money. We can tell them whatever.
Well, we're not National or International Institute for Health and whatever the NIH is. But like if you're driving your car down the road and someone jumps out of the dark and jumps in the middle of the street and you hit them, complete accident, and then you hide the body, and get busted for it.
It's kind of the hide the body thing. It's right? The whole being a communist dictatorship and disappearing doctors who are trying to whistleblow it. So look, I mean, you're right. A lot of people are focusing on the fact that, I mean, now that you say it, I mean, it's probably that it doesn't even really matter. It doesn't even really matter if it leaked out of the lab. That's just kind of like the solid political excuse for maybe prosecuting reparations or sanctions or whatever it is. But I mean, the fact that they covered it up is actually probably much more significant than the fact that they sprung it in the first place. Yeah, I mean, we're doing gain of function research right now. We're probably just more careful about it.
But I mean, imagine the hiding the body ended up causing the outbreak potentially, right? Like, so they have this outbreak. They get 3 doctors that are sick. Rather than admitting it and quarantining that area, going out and getting all contacted people isolated and stopping the spread right there.
Yep.
They try and hide it. They allow this virus to spread. Now, again, this is all conjecture for those listening. I'm not saying this is what happened. And millions of people die around the world from this virus because they were trying to hide the body. That, to me, is the issue, not that the leak happened in the first place. The leak happens in the first place, and then you say, okay, we need better regulations on Chinese virus research or something, and it starts happening, and it sucks, but whatever, for them. Like, but it's the hide the body.
I gotta say, I don't know if you saw Chernobyl, and if anybody in the audience saw Chernobyl, it was a absolutely fantastic docuseries on HBO. It's like one of the best docuseries I've ever seen. One of my favorite shows. But at the end, he gets up to give a speech in front of a court, and he's like, "Just how does an RGBMK reactor explode?" And then he goes through a really really long series, and he talks about the chemics of it, and he talks about how the reaction works, and he talks about how the government covered up a whole bunch of safety stuff. And in the end, after all of that, and he says, "And just how does an RGBMK reactor explode? It explodes because we lie." It's going to be the same exact speech when somebody does a docuseries in the year 2020, 2100.
Yeah,
Because
if it
China
ever
lied
comes
and
out.
people died.
Yeah, that's the downfall right there. Is if their lies costed that many people their lives, that's unacceptable.
Yeah. I bet
So
I wonder what their citizens think about this. All right. That's it from me on that. What do we got? We don't want to talk about farmers. You want to talk about farmers?
let's hit up UFOs
All right, let's do
and
UFOs.
then do farmers. And
Okay.
UFOs should be really short, right? We can do.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to let you introduce that one because you brought that up that you wanted to talk about that one.
Okay. So I don't have audio turned on for this. Audio is not that important, I don't think, for this, but just to kind of show. So in 2019, and then a couple videos in 2020, the U.S. government acknowledged that these videos are legit and are military. And it shows unidentified objects flying at high speeds, crazy angles, crazy change of momentums.
Unbelievable G forces.
Right, yeah. Flying in and out of the water, other things, right?
Yep.
Let me skip to like this one.
Yeah, that's a really famous one right there.
This one was from 2019. But they confirmed all of these. Or look at how fast this one's flying across the water. It's coming. Hauling it. Let's see if there's any other. I just wanted to show a couple. Yeah, that's good. So the bottom line for the UFO thing is, I don't remember why. I think it was a court order. The U.S. government has to unclassify.
I don't think it was a court order.
Yeah, thought it was, but I could be wrong. Again, I'm not convicted on this point of why. But the U.S. government is releasing this month, at least as the scheduled date, sometime in June, a report of their UFO information and unclassifying. I don't want to say all of it, but a lot of it.
Yeah, I'm sure they're just throwing out the easy ones to us, and they're keeping the real stuff in the back.
It could be. I mean, it could be all of it. I don't know that for sure though. So I mean, but they are unclassifying a lot of the UFO information. Yeah. And so there's been a couple videos that had been leaked that they confirmed before releasing this report. And so the hype on it really is that, you know, the government is confirming this stuff to gauge reaction in the populace before releasing, you know, proof of aliens or that we really got our technology from spaceships or, you know, whatever the extreme case might be. And then, you know, the other side, the conservative, I don't want to say conservative from a political standpoint, but the conservative from a alien standpoint is that, you know, they're going to release the same old grainy, no proof, has other explanation stuff. So
skeptics.
We'll see what comes
I'm in the skeptic camp.
Yeah, we'll see what comes out this month. I'm excited to see whatever it is.
You know, I think it's going to be a bunch of tough to explain, sometimes impossible to explain, but all ultimately not alien stuff, right? I'm a huge skeptic on. I don't like the label skeptic because I don't like being, you know, painted into a corner. But I've never been extremely impressed after I got taken in by my first couple UFO photos, and it's like, oh well, that's actually just a space tarp. know exactly what that is. I don't know why people keep bringing up that photo. We know exactly what that is. It was confirmed at the time. NASA knew exactly what like that kind of stuff. After the first couple times I got burned like that, I kind of just like lost interest in it. Plus, I'm just generally skeptical as a person. But can you bring up that video? Because I can give an example to the audience of like
Which one?
something that the one where you had a bunch of UFOs in there. Bring it back to maybe the first couple minutes. It's the green triangle UFOs.
The green triangle.
Yep.
Green triangle.
Yeah, give the audience a little play on that so they can see what's going on. So this right here, so this is a fantastic example, right? So as you can see, I mean that looks incredible, right? It looks like there's a floating pyramid in the sky, and anybody who's a Stargate fan is probably getting real excited. So I mean, just as an example, right? I don't have this debunk for all of these videos, but I'm sure for half of them this will come out, and then we might not figure out what's going on with the other ones. But that video right there was basically disproven by this guy who kind of does this for a living. Like he writes books on how to debunk yourself, like get out of conspiracy theory mindset. And he's like, yeah, I figured out exactly how to replicate this. It's actually really easy. So the particular camera with which that was shot was a night vision camera, and it has a triangular aperture. And when you leave that aperture unfocused on long distance things, turn into triangles. And not only did he just speculate that, he found a friend who had the exact kind of model this camera was. It had a triangle aperture. He unfocused it. He pointed it up at the sky, and he found a jet. And then he traced it, and basically he had triangle UFO footage. So it's like things like this.
The issue with that particular video, though, I believe, isn't as much the video of the object as what the radar data said it was doing. Right? Like, and that's where I think a lot of these have gained some traction that others in the past haven't. You see these videos and you're always able to say, oh, that's a reflection, that's a space tarp, which I don't even know what a space tarp is, but I'm just going to go with it. This is a weather balloon, is the common one you hear. But in these particular cases, why I think that, the Navy confirming them, the U.S. military confirming them makes people more excited is because they're also confirming that these objects showed up on radar and did things that these videos were claiming they did from another source as
well. So you're right. You're definitely right about some of them. And I'll share a little bit of an interesting thing for anybody who's not really familiar with radar or hasn't been in front of a radar system. So I'm actually when I was in the Navy, I was a radar technician. So I would sit in front of a radar feed for 7 hours a night or in the morning, whenever the heck I was standing watch. And the interesting thing about radar is that you get false signals all the time, right? So for example, you would get streamers, which are basically unidentified objects that look like they're yeah, that's me. How you doing, everybody? I'm Radar. So you would routinely get, even in these very modern systems with smart systems, with very smart target acquisition and decluttering systems and very, very high powered computers trying to work through all the chaff and the chutter, you'll still get contacts that look like they're going Mach 38 across your screen, and it's radar chaff, right? So radars aren't the best. As we've discussed with the triangular aperture is not the best, right? If you correlate those two things, it might be doing something weird, but I guarantee. So again, with the triangular aperture, it's not just that he found the triangular aperture. It's not just that he had a friend replicate it for him. It's that he also figured out the blinking pattern of the light that was off a very specific type of airplane, right? So it was a jetliner flying at a certain altitude. Now, if that was correlated with a weird radar signature, sure, it might have been weird, but I don't think that was. Now, a lot of these are different things.
Yeah, I don't know though, and I agree. Like most of these things are probably going to have some explanation, and that's why in general I don't get too excited about most of the UFO videos or sightings, because any single source of data is easy to fake, easy to misunderstand, easy to have an error. The one that gets me the most out of all these ones that have
Which
come
one?
out
I'm curious.
is the
Because some
Tic
of them
Tac.
are very,
The Tic
very
Tac one.
convincing and hard to think are not, real.
It's referred to as the Tic Tac video spaceship situation, whatever. And the reason that one gets me the most is multifold, I guess. All of it combined. Say it that way. I believe, as the story goes, the radar picked up this object, and so they dispatched the planes to go and investigate. The planes get there to investigate, and they see the white, like, frothing on the sea level from this thing flying, really close to the water and causing disturbances in the water. They fly down to track it. It starts to adjust its flight pattern to mimic the aircraft. They're monitoring it and watching it change direction and change altitude, like visually and on their electronics at inconceivable speeds.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not one pilot; it's four that corroborate the story, along with the electronics data from the ship showing that it did what they visually saw on their radar.
That,
and
to me,
things.
correlation is the most, especially the correlation between visual and radar is the most convincing to me.
Yeah, so that one to me is the one that gets me like, yeah, okay, I want to know more about this one, you know. So hopefully
were they
this
all
report.
doing mushrooms? No, their radar system wasn't doing mushrooms. I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah, and even if it was one pilot, I would be way or even two, right? Like a pilot and a co-pilot, that they could have been like, "Hey, let's do this."
You want to get weird?
or even let's conspire to get famous by seeing a spaceship, right? Like, but with the more people you have, the harder it is to do that. 4 is not impossible.
Also, generally, like I'm not saying pilots or officers are godlike individuals, but generally people who fly airplanes they're mentally stable. They're actually chosen for being a really stable, responsible individual. So it definitely lends. This is kind of what you were getting at earlier. It lends a lot of credence and interest generally to the people who are skeptical, like me, even, that this is the Navy saying, "Yeah, we don't know what a lot of these things are." But it also, if the Navy's putting out that green footage and that guy on YouTube is easy to debunk it, like that also kind of then takes me back a little bit. Like, well, there probably are no adults in this room, and we'll probably never figure out what's going on. There is one thing that I did want to say. There might be two useful categories for people who are just thinking about UFOs or who are even UFO enthusiasts already. And you probably know this if you're a UFO enthusiast. There's probably a useful distinction between what we think is extraterrestrial UFOs and what we suspect to be perhaps advanced Chinese drones. All right. So a lot of the ships, a lot of this stuff that's been happening off of San Diego, as many enthusiasts will know, is our ships go out. They go out for like test runs, and they kind of just like move around and do exercises and float around, and kind of just like get the loosen up the ship and do runs and stuff. A lot of the ships off San Diego have reported that they've been tailed by drones, right? And we don't have the capability, we do not have the technology that we know of to create the drones that do what these drones do. And then like these are fairly well documented. We, again, radar corroborated with a visual. They hung out there. We don't know what they are. They're not putting off electronic signatures that we recognize, that kind of stuff. So what I'm getting at is there might be two good categories here, which is one is like unexplainable, possibly extraterrestrial, just doing absolutely impossible things, and then there's what could be advanced military technology, probably from China or Russia.
So what you're saying is we are not the most advanced military in the world?
Or it's our own government, and it's beyond top secret, if such a thing exists. By the way, I'm only aware of top secret, so I don't know if there's a beyond top secret, but I wouldn't, because I was just a plebeian.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, I really just wanted to bring it up in a short burst for potential future talk when, and sometime this month, the government comes out and says there are aliens. So if they don't,
I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to see the organized stuff that they have to put out.
Yeah,
I would. I mean, obviously, I'm not a dumb. It's interesting regardless. All right, let's talk let's talk. I want to talk very briefly because I think we can do this briefly because we agree generally speaking. But it looks like Joe Biden is proposing a how would I phrase this neutrally? I don't think I would. He's proposing a racist tax assist program or a racist handouts program, which discriminates in favor of a race. It's black people.
It discriminates against a race. You can
In
always,
favor of a race.
if it discriminates, it's also
uh,
discriminating against.
yeah, but you don't think they're giving it to Asian people?
So hold on. So let me say.
Go for it. Yeah, go ahead. Set this up.
The government's coming out and giving financial aid to only white farmers. Would you then say that that policy discriminated for a race or against a race? You would say discriminating against.
You said they're coming out to give to white people, right?
Hypothetically, everyone would say
yes,
that.
Right. In this hypothetical scenario, I would say yes, they are coming out in favor of the white race.
Or
they're discriminating
against other races, right?
Yeah, but okay. I just said it that way because it's
how it would be worded. So in this case, the policy they're coming out with is for blacks only, or not actually blacks. It's for blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, Asian, other
people of color,
other minority,
not
farmers.
White.
Yeah,
maybe not Jewish either.
So it's discriminating against the white race. It is. I mean, it's not. I mean, to say that it's the right thing or wrong thing to do is another topic. It is discriminating against whites. It is.
Yeah, I don't like using that term because it is the term that the left uses. All right. So first of all, it's because politics, right? So technically, you're right. I just don't like saying it that way because then I start playing the game that the left does, and I start sounding like I think white people are a victim when they're not. Right, we're not a victim. We're not any more of a victim than any other race, right? So I don't like phrasing it that way. So when I say discriminating in favor of,
well, in the case of this
proper
bill, the white race is a victim more so than other races.
I don't like it. Not a fan of victim mentality.
I'm not either, but it is what it is. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I think you and I agree to a large extent. I think for me, and next week or the week after, we'll have Chris on to start talking about critical race theory and social justice theory again. Hopefully here in the near future. But I mean, to me, it's so simple. It's so simple to say. I mean, just don't make laws that discriminate, right? So like, if you have poor disadvantaged people and you think black people are poor and disadvantaged, right? Your alleged goal is to help them get out of that poverty, right? Whether regardless of what reason you think that you're helping them or why you think that they're in poverty, right? So it just so happens that the Democrats think that black people are poor because of institutional racism that still exists today and because of leftovers from Jim Crow and racism. And slavery. But my thing is it's always that it's like that actually kind of exposes your motives a little bit, right? It's really just like exposing this as a pet project, as a political pet project. Because if you really cared about poor people, you would aim this at poor people and completely ignore race. Why is a poor black person any more deserving of this funding than a poor white person? Right? And I'm not saying the poor white person, like obviously I'm not saying the poor white person is more deserving. I'm saying why is race even a factor? If you are a compassionate person who wants to help underprivileged people, there are poor white people, there are poor black people, there are poor Asians, there are poor people of every color and stripe. Why does your bill simply not help disadvantaged people?
Yeah, I agree. I think having any sort of racial alignment is a detriment to trying to bring everyone together. I'm all about helping people. I'm all about making things
right
so that everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed in life. Don't necessarily. That's not even the right way to say it. I don't want everyone to have an equal opportunity. I want everyone to I was having this conversation this past weekend with that same family member I mentioned before, and you know, the example I gave was you have two exact duplicate people, right? Same qualifications, exactly to the T.
Yeah.
They're working at exact duplicate companies, with the exception that one person's boss was available one day and they went out and got a beer, and the other one wasn't. And they built a relationship that the other one didn't, and one was way more successful because they were able to ride the coattails of that person, and the other one wasn't. Right? Neither one did anything to deserve it. It just is what it is. Life isn't fair. Right place, right time. These things happen. They do. Right? Within a race, between races, within a sex, between sexes. I mean, I think there's statistics that show that if you're tall, you're more likely to get promoted. Like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
there,
probably.
there's tons of things.
Handsome too. Handsome, there's
Attractiveness is for
attractive.
sure one of them. Yep. So these things, it exists. There are inequalities, unfairnesses in the world that are going to be there forever, and I'm all about trying to make things as reasonably fair as possible for everyone to have the same opportunity. But you can't. You also can't force it. And I think the goal of getting rid of color in people's eyes, making it so that race isn't a factor for anybody, is harmed, not helped, by passing legislation that distinguishes based on color, regardless of how or why or for.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's against the principle of individualism, right? It's literally it's against what this country stands for, or stood for, or should stand for, right? It's against everything that we hold near and dear. It's and again, like I said, it's straight up besides the point. If you're a compassionate person that wants to help people, why does the race of the poor person who's receiving the money matter? The answer is that it shouldn't.
On an individual level, that can matter. Some people, like, if you feel responsible or guilty for the way your ancestors treated their ancestors, it may matter to you.
Nope.
On an individual level, it may matter to you.
The sins of the father is religious bullshit. Sorry for
I'm not talking on a federal level. I'm not talking on a governmental level. I'm talking on an individual level. If I am looking to give money to a charity and I want to help people, I may, on an individual level, believe that I would like to give this money to blacks or to whomever that my ancestors treated poorly, right?
I would absolutely. That's your personal choice. I would disagree on, like, if I was your friend, I would disagree on a personal level. But that 100%, that's your prerogative, and I have no societal opposition to that. If it's your choice to give to whatever charity you want to.
I wouldn't even disagree on a personal level. I don't think there's any argument that there was racism in the past and that it made it more difficult for black families in the past to succeed.
Yep.
And if you believe, which I do, that and I don't know that there's much data to go against this, that the better off your family or parents were, the more likely you are to be able to succeed, then a lot of the blacks communities and stuff, if their back families struggled more, then it's harder and harder as it goes on. They're getting closer. They should be getting closer, at least, and the wealth gap says they're not. But
so they're not. So there's right.
But
so
there's other issues on this. But the point is, if you believe that you want to help somebody to try and get even, that's on you. That's fine. But again, I think from a federal level, we're trying to
on a federal level now.
Yeah, we're trying to separate race from things. I don't think that we should do it on a federal level.
Yeah, 100%, right. And then like you opened up. I mean, there's just so many problems with that. Like, so for example, the median income household of blacks and whites in the 1960s was closer than it is today. Like, how does that square with racism being the cause of the wealth gap, right? So why would that be the case when things have gotten more free since the 1960s for black people, right? The discrimination has gone down, right? And the left would take that as, correlation is causation. Like, oh, well, the gap has widened, so there is racism, where correlation is not equal causation. But I mean, it's just like, there's just so many problems with the reparations mentality. There's like so many problems. Like obviously, especially when you broaden it out to federalism, but even for the individual who is considering, let's say the posh white liberal who's feeling white guilt over what her quote unquote ancestors, other white people have done to black people in the past. Like there's so many things to consider. Like were your ants, first of all, did you do anything? And the answer is no, because not a single person alive has owned, maybe not a single, but there's vanishingly few people alive who have held black people as slaves, right? And those people are absolute filth and criminals and should be in jail for the rest of their life because that's, illegal and immoral.
Firing squad.
Firing squad, right? We have that now, or we're going to. But so not only has nobody alive been responsible for that, and nobody alive is also responsible for Jim Crow. Very few people, relatively speaking, had ancestors that were directly responsible for those things, right? So for example, I'm generally speaking, a second generation Italian immigrant. Like I'm mostly Sicilian, right? My ancestors didn't oppress black people, right? My ancestors got invaded all the time, right? And then the other half of me is from some Irish people that were up here in Connecticut the whole time with absolutely no slaves. Like so, it's like what? Just because I'm white, I should feel bad about what the other white people who I'm not related to at all, even like sort of like nationally, did to black people, right? It's like there's just so many problems with that. And then it's like not all the black people in America are descended from slaves, right? A good portion of them are, but I actually brought up this list of ethnic groups in the United States with average incomes higher than white people, right? So let me just show you this real quick. And this to me is like, this is one of the most brain exploding things for people on the left who just have this narrative about white people being at the top of the hierarchy in the United States.
Hard to read.
Yeah, I know it's hard to read. I'm going to have to read this for you. There's actually not much I can do about that. I can zoom in here a little bit. That's a little better. Okay, so not going to spend too much time on this because I did want to get to a quick mask thing for the last 15 minutes here. But this is a list of median income households by ethnicity in the United States, right? This is 2019, and it goes from highest at 135,000 down to, actually didn't go down to the bottom earlier, down to 20,000. Holy cow, Somalis.
Freaking Somalis, dude.
Somalis are not doing too well. Holy cow. All right, so here's the list. And you have the rank over here on the side, right? So this is the first rank, making 135, second at 102, third at 100,000, etc. And then you go all the way down here to median white American household income at 65,902. And that means that these ethnic groups, these 60 ethnic groups in the United States, have a higher median income, household income, than white Americans. And some of the people on here might surprise you.
That's not an exact way to look at it, because a lot of those groups that you have there are white.
Well, yeah, 100%. I know that too. So,
which would be included in that median. So what this says to me
correct.
is that people that identify as immigrant vastly outperform those that were born here. It's kind of the way
100% they do. 100% they do. But so
purely, fair to say either. But I think that's my big takeaway. Because like as you scroll down there, I saw French, Bulgaria, Swedish, American.
Well, I mean, just look at the top two. Top two. Indian American, Taiwanese American. The first white one is Australian Americans. Then it goes Filipino, South African, which is likely white, Macedonian, which is Greek, Indonesian, which is absolutely not white, Iranians, which are Pakistani, Iranian, Lebanese, Austrian, white, Russian, white, Lithuanian, white, Chinese, Japanese, Turkish.
You know what this tells me is we should have more immigrants if we want to raise our GDP.
Okay, you're coming up on some weird stuff there, but the one that I really wanted to point out was Nigerian Americans at $68,658. Nigerian Americans make above average, above white average income household income.
Ghana is black, isn't it?
Guyanese?
No.
Oh, Ghanaian? Yep, they're
Nigerian.
black too. Guyanese. Egyptians are technically Africans, even though they look white. I mean, Thai, Asian, right? Laotian, whatever. Like, there's just this narrative that white people are A, sitting on top of the hierarchy, and B, that, you know, minorities cannot, you know, that the systems of the United States are designed to benefit white people. And it's just, I mean, median white household income is 60 down on the chain, right? And there's obviously other white people up in there, but it's just like, it's Nigerian Americans making more than the average white person. Like
Oh, median. That's different than average.
Yes, medianly.
It's way different than average.
It is a type of average.
Yeah, but it's not like if I had 10 people.
Yeah, and okay, wait. We don't have to do a math lesson. We know what median.
It's important. It's important. If I had 10 people, 8 of which made $100,000, one made $50,000, and one made $0, the median would be 50,000.
Okay, but okay, right, but this okay. So I'm not going to get too much into this, but this is probably a curve, right? And the median is probably taken from somewhere right around the peak because of how large the sample sizes are.
No, that the median is the middle number. You take all of the numbers, you one to whatever it is.
All right,
and
well,
you
we'll
take
talk
the middle
about this
one.
later. Here's the point, though. I mean, the median. I think the point still stands, regardless of how you pick apart the, you know, what this is and what that is. I mean, I suppose I don't understand why they're not doing mean, but there it is. So there it is. The Nigerian American's doing better than the average white American.
But I mean, I generally do agree with you, though, that people overlook the
people not seeing the forest for the leaves.
That other races. I mean, if you look at just race, wasn't it Asian Americans are or top, and then
Indian Americans doing real well. Good for them, by the way. That's fantastic. Like for those who think I'm maybe, for those who would give me the least benefit of the doubt and thinking maybe I'm complaining about that, that's fantastic. I mean, that means the melting pot is working, and I fully stand for that, right? Especially, you know, like those are some hardworking people. I respect the cultures of hard work and the fact that they actually work. So to me, that's a great thing. It just completely shits on the narrative that the United States is systemically beneficial to white people exclusively.
By the way, my example of median was a little off. Just so you know, it wasn't exact, but it's gets the point across that it's the middle number in a string of numbers. It's not average.
What's the mode?
I don't remember them all, dude.
Are you smarter than a third grader? I don't know, man. They could probably kick our ass.
I think the mode is related to Depeche. I don't know.
Depeche mode. All right, cool. All right, so that was my little rant about that. It's like if you're gonna help people and your goal is to help people, then help people, right? Help the type of people you're trying to talk about. Just like stop, get off of race.
What got me the most about that? Well, I don't want to say the most. What got me a lot on that is also how they twist numbers around. So a lot of these articles were talking about how in the 1960s, like 1/6 of farmers were black, or 19 whatever year it was, and now it's like 2% of farmers are black, right? And they're making a big deal about how we've had this giant decline in African American farmers, which may or may not be a big deal, may have been because of racism or not. I don't know. I haven't looked into it at all. But the point is they come out and say only 2% of farmers are black now, right? And then later in the article, they're defending this bill going through and focusing the money on the minority farmers by saying that only 2% of the stimulus money that went to farmers originally went to blacks, making it sound like, you know, the whites disproportionately took all this money. Like they would say 98% of the money went to white farmers. Well, 98% of farmers were white. You just said that like 3 paragraphs above.
You just said that.
Like, Come on, but it's the way that they twist the data to make it seem.
They're not even doing that consciously. Like it's to me. I hate to sound like a populist like Tucker Carlson, but like they're looking for the victim mentality, and their brain works so hard to spin almost every paragraph they can write into. Here's what else is wrong about this, and how it disadvantages black people. And oh, by the way, I'll save you. Like.
Yeah, we've talked about it. I'm all about trying to help people and give people equal opportunities. And if you're starting in an impoverished area, we talked about that one city in Florida that the millionaire went and helped out.
Yeah,
ago.
Like I thought about that the other day.
Like I'm all about trying to help people that don't have the same opportunities that other people do to give them those opportunities. Right? I'm all about that. And so, in this case, like if there were, people that needed this help more than others, I'm all about giving it to them. I don't care what their race is, though.
Right, exactly. Which would be the poor people.
So rather than saying we're going to forgive loans of minorities, we're going to forgive loans of people that, lost this much money, or their farms about to be foreclosed on, or like,
I hope they get sued into the dirt. I think somebody is suing them, and I hope
somebody is. I don't know how it doesn't. I mean,
well, I'm sure the language. I'm sure the language in the bill is sufficiently vague enough, or hits on other things that aren't technically race or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, from what I've read, and I've tried to look at this from every angle, because I still can't believe that is what is being pushed.
Believe it.
I can't find anywhere that doesn't actually say that it's for minority farmers only, and I think in the past, it's been accepted to have minority only things, right? Scholarships can be for minorities and other things, but
I think that's okay because they're private.
Yeah. I don't know of a federal grant, and there could be one in chat, or viewers, if you know of one, send a thing. I don't know of any federal funding or federal grants or federal whatever that is specific to individual races. I don't know.
I'm not sure either. I'm not sure. All right. I think that about does it for that. I wanted to talk about this real quick, and I think we have about the exact appropriate amount of time to talk about this, right? So, and now I've set this premise up for you a couple times, but I'm going to go ahead and set this up for the audience. So this is a bit of anecdote, and I wanted to talk about masking in the United States. Okay, so now that the CDC has come out and they've said, basically, if you're vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask, right? Indoors, outdoors, whatever it is, right? I think there's a few exceptions, like schools, or there's like small fringe exceptions at the edge of things. But basically, in general society, going to a shop, going to a restaurant, per the CDC guidelines, you as a vaccinated individual do not need to wear masks. So I have a little anecdote that I want to talk about, which is I went out on the weekend. I went shopping. I went to the store here in Connecticut. And I was expecting, right? I was expecting the following. I was expecting that liberals are big on science, and so they've gotten vaccinated and they're no longer wearing their masks. And I'm also expecting that according to the narrative, that Republicans are anti-vax, but they don't care about the rules, so they pretend they're vaccinated. So, AKA, I would see just about nobody wearing masks. That's what I expected. However, when I got out there, I saw about 50-50. I saw about half the people wearing masks and half the people not wearing masks. And the interesting thing is, if I'm allowed to typecast a little bit, the stereotypical liberal, about half of them were wearing masks, and the stereotypical Republican, about half of them were also wearing masks on both sides. And so I'm very confused. And let me set this up to you right now. Because again, I expected to see no masks because either people were for the science, aka the way the liberals like to say that they are, and they've been vaccinated, they don't need the masks, or they're those dirty Republicans who are anti-vax and don't care about the CDC guidelines and will just take advantage of them to not wear masks. So here's the set of questions, right? So liberals, if you believe in science, why aren't you vaccinated? Okay, and therefore wearing masks. If you are vaccinated, why are you wearing that mask, right? And to the conservatives that I saw, if you are vaccinated, why are you wearing that mask? And if you're anti-vax, why are you wearing the mask to pretend that you're following the CDC guidelines? So I'm just like, so all of these, so the national narrative of, or the mainstream media narrative of liberals are pro science and they're following the science 100%. It just doesn't seem to be. It doesn't seem to be accurate there, right? Because the people that I stereotypically saw as liberals were either not vaccinated, which is the science, or they were wearing masks as vaccinated people, which is anti-science, right? And then the Republicans who are supposed to be the rubes, half of them, it looks like, again, anecdotally from the people that I saw, and I saw a whole bunch of people that, looked the part, half of them were, it's supposed to be the uneducated anti-vax rubes who don't care about anything, were still wearing masks. And so I was very confused because this is just not the scenario that has been put forward by, let's say, the left or the liberal media.
Yeah, it doesn't confuse me really.
No? What do you think?
No, I think that you have falsely stereotyped. And again, kind of back to what I said before, with any grouping of people, you have a distribution of beliefs within that group. It doesn't matter how narrow you take it, as you continue to break it down, there will be some distribution within each group. And I think,
right.
And I think
suppose,
if you look at liberals,
but liberal is an idea grouping, right? That's actually just.
I mean, we've talked about this before. That one of the beliefs of the liberals, liberal side, is to protect, right? To pass laws, to do things that protect, even if it's above what is necessary. So, if I have that mentality and I'm like, I've been wearing a mask for a year. Yes, I'm vaccinated, but let's be doubly safe. I'll just keep wearing it. It can't hurt. Right,
but it is anti-science. It actually can hurt. Yeah, why? So if you wear a dirty mask, you're at more of a risk.
So I'm a liberal that does laundry. Okay, like what? Come on.
Okay, no. That's sure, yes, but there is a risk of, like, the risk of touching your face because you have a mask is probably more of a risk than it is walking around vaccinated in an environment, not wearing a mask.
What's the risk of touching your face if you're vaccinated?
I don't know. You get pink eye or something. I don't know.
You touch your butt and then touch your face? What are you doing?
Do you not?
No. I touch my face, then my butt. Be smart about your order of operations, man.
I gotta review.
So anyway, yeah. So from a liberal perspective, though, like it makes sense that there's going to be people that are vaccinated and choose to wear the mask. It also makes sense that there are people that didn't get vaccinated yet and are planning to. I know some people that are, pretty liberal that are like, yeah, I haven't done it yet because I want other people to, or I haven't got the time, or I haven't gotten around to it, or blah blah blah, whatever the reason is. But I expect that even once we have pretty much everyone vaccinated, and that maybe COVID is a diminished issue, people are still going to wear their mask. I mean, if you look at the Chinese historically, after all the bird flus and the SARSs and all that stuff that happened over there, they just all kept wearing their masks. Like, not all of them, but a good chunk of them.
It's true, yeah.
Everywhere, because they're like, hey, let's just be safe than sorry. So they're useless. People are used to wearing it, keep wearing it. And as far as the Republican side, I thought you guys were all law and order, my bro. Hey, the law is you wear your mask if you're not vaccinated. Well, hey,
are you saying you agree with that assertion, and that's why you think they're still?
I'm saying your assertion is that every Republican is like, fuck the law.
No, I don't care about my assertion.
I can get away with it. My assertion is that there's a large number of people on the Republican side that are going to do what they're supposed to do, even if they're not going to get caught, just because they're going to do what they think is that's the right thing to do. That's what I'm supposed to. I'm going to do it. Like, all Republicans aren't sleazebags like you're trying to make them out to be.
Right. So basically, I did kind of sarcastically set up this whole premise where I was coming from the attitude of liberals are science following, God fearing, they will 100%, be protective, and then that the Republicans are the rubes. Obviously, I don't believe that. That's why I sort of phrased it sarcastically like that. But I think it does. The scenario that I put forward does do kind of what you just led to, which is even among these two very disparate sides, it looks to us, especially even us, you and me doing politics all the time, it looks like there's these sharper divisions than there are. And really, I mean, again, it is anecdotally, and we are sort of taking my word for this scenario. It 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 does look like there is responsibility on both sides. I mean, there were definitely some people who were 100% Trumpers, and they were still wearing their masks, right? And then there were some liberals who, like you said, you anecdotally, you know, some liberals who are supposed to be the pro-science, very caring, trying to help other people, who haven't gotten the vaccine that would help them stop the spread of COVID, right? So there's much. I think there's just much more of a mix and a match than we think there is, and the lines aren't quite as stark as we think they are.
I think there's truth to that, but I also do think that of your observations, I imagine the vast majority of the liberals that had masks on were still vaccinated versus the vast majority of the Republicans that had masks on were not vaccinated yet, would be my belief.
Yeah, could be, but I would still encourage them to get it, but that actually restores my faith, and it should restore a lot of people's faith in the fact that people aren't as bad as we make them out to be. The Republicans aren't as crazy as we think they are. The liberals aren't as stupid as we think they are. Like, I mean, there's responsible people everywhere, and the fact that there were still 50% masks, and that actually very closely matches the amount of population. It's like 10% off the population that should be wearing masks. That's actually, it looks like a pretty good thing to me. It looks like people are being responsible. At least here in my anecdote in Connecticut, it looks like it's pretty good.
Yeah,
I know in Florida it's not quite the same, but that is the Sunshine State, right? COVID doesn't really do too well in the sun.
Yeah, when I was in Florida, like nobody had masks on, but I mean, I have another half hour at least of stuff I could talk about on this, but we'll have to save it.
We'll have to save it for next time.
I'll have to save it for sure. But my closing thought is that as I mentioned a few times in this podcast, I had a conversation with a family member over this weekend, and they influenced a few of my topics. That particular family member is one that influenced the topic from what's his name? Tucker Carlson. Jesus.
Tucker. Oh, that's right. Yep.
And he, that family member truly believed that Tucker's information was correct and that the vaccine had caused these deaths.
Yeah.
His comment to me was, I took this, I'm vaccinated. I got the vaccine because I'm old enough that I've lived a long enough life. I don't, if something happened to me, it is what it is. But, he has a close family member that is susceptible to diseases, has some health issues. And so, he felt that it was worth putting himself at risk because he's lived such a long life to protect the other person. Even though he, and he's like, look, I did it because of that. He's like, but I do believe this shit's risky, and that if I was younger, I wouldn't have got it. Like.
So you're saying that it's possible to be wrong and still be a good person?
Yeah, definitely. Intelligence, critical thinking ability, and morality are different.
I bet they're inversely related. That's my assertion.
No.
No.
I
bet it is. So. I think it is.
Morality and intelligence. You think they're
inversely? The smarter you are, the worse of a person.
Oh, you know what? I was thinking that the wrong way. I actually probably would agree with that. Yeah. If there's a relation, they're probably inversely.
I know there's a relation for intelligence and happiness, actually, inversely.
Yeah. I'm so unhappy.
That's why I'm so happy all the time. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it from us. Thanks for watching, everybody. Again, we're still the Left, Right, and Center show, but we will have a solution for you soon. We are honing in on something that we like. I'm certain of it. Certain of it this time. And like I said, we'll see. Hopefully, Chris. Hopefully next week. Probably the week after. We'll be very excited to have him back and start doing the podcast again. So, from us, thank you very much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.